Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning.
Okay. We'll do a quick revision of the 3 chapters. We'll start with the first one today because you'll be having your exams, no? You'll be having the next set of exams soon. So we will do the revision, a quick summary of each chapter day by day, and then we'll continue with the rest of the chapters for term 2. Okay. For term 1, only 3 chapters will be there, the first 3. So today we'll see the first chapter. Please take the first chapter, open your text. Okay. Yes. So we have to practice the MCQ method also. You are familiar with OMR sheet, isn't it? Yes. For 12 standards, it is that method for term 1 now. And you'll also have to practice that method. Before that, we'll discuss the main concepts in the chapter. Okay. So please keep your videos on, everyone. Switch on your videos. Okay, we'll start from the first page. That is page number 2, first page of the chapter. The first point that we learned was, why is any knowledge discipline difficult to define? Define. Okay, and there were 2 points. If you have not marked, please underline that and keep. Firstly, because it evolves continuously. That is, it keeps on changing all the time. So it evolves continuously. And secondly, because the range of phenomena it studies cannot be captured by any one definition. That is, in psychology also we discuss. We have 3 key concepts in the main definition of psychology, isn't it? Which are they? Which are the 3 key concepts in the definition?
Mental processes,
Mental processes,
experiences, and behaviors.
experiences, and
Contexts.
you were right. Mental processes, experiences, and behaviors. You were right, Amal Roshan. Don't confuse yourself.
Behaviors.
Yes, behaviors in different contexts. Different context comes as a tail of the definition at the end part. We study these 3 processes in different contexts. That's what we deal with in psychology. But along with that, till now we have learned other specific terms than mental process, behaviors, and experiences, isn't it? We learned about cognition. We learned about sensation. We were starting to learn about Kevin. We were starting to learn about the attentional processes, perception, then learning, human development, then which are the different stages of development. We cannot include all these different terms in one single definition, isn't it? That is also one problem, and that is also factor that we consider when we try to define something. So it's very difficult to define because first point is it evolves or it changes continuously. And the second point is it has a vast area of application. So we cannot include all these terms into one single definition. These are the 2 points. Okay, remember the example of the smartphone, the first smartphone, Siemens. Yes. So connected with that example and learn. Then another important, short answer, not short answer, 1 word question or objective type question is the derivation or the origin of the word psychology. Psyche meaning, what is the meaning?
Soul.
Soul, very good. And logos meaning?
Science.
Science or study of a subject or study of something. So when we put that together, and which language is it derived from?
Greek.
Greek. It's derived from Greek language. And when we put that together, psychology was a study of soul or mind. It was considered as a study of soul or mind alone earlier. And I've noted this in your answer sheets. When the definition of psychology is asked, please don't write this because it is an outdated version of the definition of psychology. Okay. So please don't write that. We have to write the formal definition. Psychology is formally defined as that sentence. Don't keep on writing psychology is the study of soul or mind. You can write this point when it comes to the paragraph type questions, that is short answer, long answer type questions. You can add this point. Psychology was earlier considered as the study of soul or mind. That way you can add this point. Okay, there it is valid. But when a question is asked for, I mean, 1 mark questions and are asked regarding the definition, then you have to give the formal definition itself. Fine. Then, yeah, then the formal definition. What is the definition, Sanjana? Definition of psychology?
Defined as a science which studies behavior, mental process, and experience in various contexts.
Various contexts. Okay, the 3 key processes should be there, and at the end, different contexts should be there. In the beginning, formally defined. That should also be there. The term formal is very important. Okay, then we saw the 3 key processes in particular, the mental processes, experiences, and behaviors. Then experiences, we told that experiences are dash in nature, subjective or objective. Experiences of human beings are dash in nature. Yes, Mehdi?
I'm subjective in nature.
Subjective in nature, which means it will change from person to person. It will be different for different individuals. If there are how many are there? 16 members of us in the class, and the experiences that you might be having will be different, very different from each other. Okay, so that's why experiences are called to be subjective in nature. Then it is both, it is affected by both internal as well as external factors. That also we learned with the examples. Then behaviors. That was a new term for you, not behaviors, the types of behaviors, covert and overt. I told you, related with O. Overt, observable, OO. Okay, overt means it will be observable by another outsider, not by us, by any outsider. Suppose if I am waving to you, you are an outsider, you are observing me, and you can see my behavior. I am waving. You can see my action, you can observe my action, isn't it? So that is overt in nature, outwardly observable. That is overt in nature. And if you cannot, if a second person cannot observe your behavior, then your behavior is covert in nature. And you have to know the examples for both. The normal thinking process, that is also a covert behavior. Okay. Then in that paragraph, we have a few examples, so you should go through that. Then psychology as a discipline. Psychology as a discipline also, it's a very general topic. It is considered as 2 sciences. What are they? Psychology is considered as a hybrid science, basically, a hybrid of which 2 sciences? Social science and natural science. Yes, social science and natural science. Natural science like physics, chemistry, biology, and all those things. And social science like the history, anthropology, all those things. Okay. So psychology has both the characteristics of a social science as well as a natural science, and the explanation is given. You have to read that thoroughly. And one problem with MCQ tests are you might get questions from every nook and corner of the textbook. Okay. And if you get it wrong, obviously you'll lose 1 whole mark for that question. It's easy to attempt, but I would consider it a bit difficult, because if it was a descriptive type of test, obviously you would have written something or the other about it, and at least 1/4 marks can be given for that. if you know anything about the concept. But here you have to know the exact answer. You have to find out the exact answer from the options. That's where you get the mark. So please keep reading the textbook. And who established the first laboratory in psychology? Abhilash.
1879 Leipzig.
Who? I'm asking who? Who established the first laboratory? 1879 and Leipzig, and which place? Germany. It was in Germany. And who established? Who established it?
Robert Wood.
What Wundt? It's not Robert Wundt. It's something else Wundt.
Ma'am, William Wundt.
Wilhelm Wundt. Okay, not Robert Wundt. It's Wilhelm Wundt. All right. Then that's it. In that portion, few of the general topics are given, and the point why I'm asking you to read through this topic is assertion reasoning type questions might come. They are also coming under objective type questions, and the options will be like this: assertion is true, but reason is false, or assertion is false, reason is true, or both are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of the assertion, or both are false. It would be really confusing. So what you have to do is, there'll be one assertion given, that will be one statement, then there'll be one reason given. First of all, check if both the statements are true or not. Then only you'll have to look into the rest of the options. So when you get such a question, just read the two sentences, check if it is true or not. If both are true, then go for the next option. What you have to do is, after assertion, insert a because. After the assertion statement, try to insert a because and read the reason together with that. That is, so and so happened because so and so is the thing. So if it makes sense, if it has a connection, then obviously the assertion and reason are true, and the reason is the correct explanation of the assertion. Do you understand? That's how you should do it. So whenever you get an assertion reasoning question, first of all, analyze the truthfulness of both the statements. You have to check if both the statements are true or not. Then only move to the next step. That is, if you think it's true, then add because and see after the assertion. Then you can easily find out if it is related or not. Okay, and for that, you have to read the textbook. If you have to know that it is true, or if you have to make sense out of the assertion and reasoning, obviously you have to know the concept in depth. Okay, so that's it. Then next topic was understanding mind and behavior. Understanding mind and behavior. And this part contains case studies, basically. The lobes of the brain. Then we talked about the, I think, phantom arm and all, isn't it? Yes, phantom arm. Then impostures, all those things. So just read through the cases. Then which discipline emphasizes the role played by the mind in strengthening the immune system? Which is that discipline? Or what is the name given to that discipline? Should I repeat? Yes.
Psychoneuroimmunology.
Yes. Which is the discipline that emphasizes the role played by the mind in strengthening the immune system? Most probably, if mind and immune system are given together, it will be psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, most probably. In most of the places, this is the case. So when you hear or when you see, when you read mind along with these or mental processes along with this immune system, most probably it will be 99.9% it will be psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, so keep that in mind. Then popular notions about the discipline of psychology. That is, psychology is not what? What did we learn under that topic? Psychology is not? Under popular notions, what did we learn? Psychology is not dash. It's not based on hindsight. So psychology is not
Common sense.
common sense. Okay, I hope you know that point. Then common sense will be based on, or commonsensical explanations will be based on hindsight. Okay, and psychology is not like that. It is developing science. It has a scientific background and so on. Then we have learned the Dweck study to support the fact that it is not, psychology is not common sense. Then in towards the last paragraph, it is given. It is different from the other pseudopsychology, the palmology, then phrenology, skull study, then other pseudopsychology. Pseudopsychology means false psychology, something that is not a part of psychology. Okay. And it's not mind reading, it's not the astrology or astronomy or such and such things. Then next, from next part onwards, the main topic starts, evolution of psychology. Take page number 8. Page number 8. Evolution of psychology. Okay. There Wilhelm Wundt's name is given. If you have not marked, please mark it. 1879, Leipzig, Germany. Wilhelm Wundt. The first psychological laboratory was established. Okay. Then, which is the first school of psychology that we learned? The first part in the evolution. Building blocks or elements of mind.
Structuralism.
Structuralism. Okay, we learned about the structure of mind, and the structure can be built only with the elements, isn't it? Only with the units. So that's the focus of structuralism, basic building blocks of mind, or the basic units of mind. That is the main focus of structuralism. And which method was used for structuralism, to study structuralism? There was a typical name for that.
Introspection.
Introspection. Introspection means people look into their own feelings, their own thoughts, their own behaviors, and then give self-reports. That was the main disadvantage of introspection too, because it cannot be verified by any other outsider. Suppose if Sanjana is telling that Sanjana is very tired, or feeling very depressed today, or feeling very happy today, or she's not feeling well today. I mean, not physically, mentally, or emotionally, then she is introspecting, isn't it? And she'll give me or give us a report of her own thoughts. What are the different directions in which she has gone to think about a particular topic. And she is giving us a verbal report or maybe a written report. And then we cannot verify that. We cannot verify if it is true or not, isn't it? We do not know if this is exactly what she thought, or at this particular moment, is this the right thought that came to her mind, or is that the feeling that she is going through right now? Like if I ask her, she might tell I'm all right, but we don't know. We can't verify that, isn't it? That was the problem of introspection method, and that was a major criticism for structuralism also, because it was studied using introspection. Yeah, there is a sentence at the end of that paragraph. Please mark it. It was considered less scientific because the introspective reports could not be verified by outside observers. That's why structuralism and introspection faced a lot of criticisms. I'll repeat the sentence. It was considered less scientific because the introspective reports could not be verified by outside observers. This led to the development of new perspectives in psychology. Otherwise, if everybody would have accepted that that discipline or that school of psychology, then there would not have been any other schools that followed. Okay, because some of the individuals criticized this method, some of the individuals were against the school of psychology. That's why other disciplines or other schools of psychology came up as a criticism to structuralism. And what is the next one after structuralism we learned about? Yes. After structuralism.
Behaviorism.
Behaviorism.
Humanistic perspective.
Humanistic perspective. Before that, which one dealt with the functions of the mind?
Psychoanalysis.
Psychoanalysis dealt with the functions of the mind. Listen to me. Adaptive functions of the mind. Find out if you don't know.
Ma'am, functionalism.
Functionalism. So functionalism was the next one. It dealt with the adaptive functions of the mind. Okay. Mary, I think you were not there, isn't it? During the class? She left. Okay. Then, who is the major proponent of functionalism?
William James.
William James. He was an American psychologist and set up a psychological laboratory in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Underline that if you have not. After the laboratory was set up in Leipzig, this William James set up another psychological laboratory that was in Massachusetts, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And developed what was called functionalist approach to the study of human mind. And William James believed that instead of focusing on the structure of the mind, psychology should instead study what the mind does and how behavior functions in making people deal with their environment. Okay, what the mind does and how behavior functions. What and how, that was dealt with by the school of psychology called functionalism. The adaptive functions of the mind. What are the functions of the mind? Okay. So when we talk about any function, we talk about the basic what and how of it, isn't it? Like suppose, what are the functions of a pen? If I ask you what are the functions of a pen, what do you use it for?
Use it for writing.
You'll use it for writing. Other than that, any unconventional uses? You might use it to poke your friend, isn't it? When the teacher is in the class and you cannot talk, you might poke your friend with your pen. If you're very angry, you might throw the pen at someone. You can use it for playing pen fight. Yes, have you ever played? When I was in class 5, this was very trending, pen fights. And the teacher would come to the class and go with a collection of pens. The Parker will be there, the ink pens, the fountain pens, all those things will be there. The ball pens will be there. All these had ratings also during that time. Okay. So we talk about I asked a question, what are the different things that we use this pen for? There are different things, isn't it? And we can describe in two ways. What are the pens used for, or what are the functions that the pen is used for? Or we can also tell how is it used. Like some pens you have to remove the cap and use. Some pens you have to turn it from the back side and use. Some pens you have to fill in the ink and use, and so on. Yes. So functionalism basically talks about the what and how. That is the basic adaptive functions of the mind, not the pen, of the mind. Okay. Then structuralism was based on the structure. the building blocks, this use small elements that we use to make up the whole mind. So that's the functionalism. Then yeah, there is one more person there. I don't know if you've noticed it, John Dewey at the end of that. A very influential educational thinker of the time, John Dewey used functionalists to argue that human beings seek to function effectively by adapting to their environment. And why are we doing different functions? It is to adapt to our changing environment. Okay, we do different functions and we do different activities. We engage in different forms of functions because we want to adapt to the changing environment, isn't it? Even in real life also that is the same. Yes, suppose if mom is not at home, usually she is the one who used to cook. But if suppose mom is not at home on a particular day, obviously if you're hungry, either you'll order food from Swiggy or Zomato, or you'll have to cook on your own, isn't it? Or you'll have to grab food from the fridge, heat it up and then eat. That was not your function, but you function because you want to adapt to the changing environment. In that environment, the situation is you have a circumstance. You don't have mom at home. You have to do it on your own to survive. So again, you are adapting to the changing environment. So any function that you do is to adapt to the changing environment. That is why it is called adaptive functions. Okay. And here in functionalism, we focus on the adaptive functions of human mind. Are you able to follow? Okay. So after that came after functionalism came which one?
Behaviorism.
Evolution is after behaviorism. Before that,
Gestalt psychology.
Gestalt psychology. Yeah. So started with structuralism, functionalism, then we came to the Gestalt psychology. That was in in the early 20th century. A new perspective called Gestalt psychology emerged in Germany as a reaction to structuralism. Okay. And again, structuralism was set up, or it was introduced because of the establishment of psychological laboratory in Leipzig. That was in Germany, isn't it? And so it was done by Wilhelm Wundt also. So obviously Wilhelm Wundt will be a part of structuralism. Now what happened is in the early 20th century, as an opposition to this structuralism, came another perspective that is called Gestalt psychology. And that was also brought up in Germany. Because structuralism was in Germany, or it emerged in Germany. So as an opposition to that, in that same place itself, another perspective came up. That was Gestalt psychology. And I think in the notes I've given names of the proponents of Gestalt psychology, isn't it? Wolfgang Kohler and all. Yes? Yes. You have to study that also. Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, Fritz Perls, and so on. So it focused on the organization of perceptual experiences instead of looking at the components of the mind. So it's components of the mind was looked up or looked upon by which group of people? Components of the mind. Structuralism, because elements, units, components, all are the same. Structure of mind is made only when these elements or components are put together. Okay, so that was focused in structuralism. When it comes to Gestalt psychology, it is based on the organization of these elements. The focus is not on the elements, but the organization of it, the form or shape of it. Okay, remember, no, in the coming chapter, that is the chapter that we started last day, it has the principles of Gestalt psychology in it. We learn about the different principles in Gestalt psychology, then you'll understand very much about what Gestalt is all about. And I think in the PPT, I showed you pictures of Gestalt psychological principles, isn't it? Whole is better than the
sum of its parts.
Sum of its parts. Whole is always better than the sum of its parts. That's a basic tagline of Gestalt psychology. So the whole means the whole form or the whole shape or the whole organization of the components is important than the elemental parts. Okay, that is the focus of Gestalt psychology. Then, the Gestalt psychologists argue that when we look at the world, our perceptual experience is more than the sum of the components of the perception. In other words, what we experience is more than the inputs received from our environment. Okay, so our experience, the whole experience is important than the small elements or stimulus that we get from the environment. Now, when I'm speaking to you now in the class, right at this moment, it follows a here and now approach, Gestalt psychology. That's why I'm explaining this again. You can hear my voice. My voice is a stimulus here, isn't it? But you are getting the whole experience of a class. Even though there are different elements in this, like you can see me, there is sensation in vision. You can hear my sound. Then you have different things going around you, isn't it? So each element are not considered here, but as a whole experience. Suppose if somebody calls you over the phone right now, you tell them, I'm in class, I'm attending a class, isn't it? That is your whole experience. Or you would not say that I can hear the sound of a fan, I'm listening to ma'am's voice, I'm listening to the noises around, I'm watching a video, or I can see all my classmates in the class. Would you keep on explaining all those things? No, the whole experience is important for you, isn't it? You will just say, I am attending class. That attending the class is the experience that you're having right now, not the single elements that you're having. Okay, so that is why it is said whole is better, or whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That is the focus of Gestalt psychology. Is it clear now? You have to think from a bit philosophical point of view to understand the schools, especially the parts that are coming up, like humanistic, psychoanalysis and all that. It's very much philosophical in nature. Okay, then experience is holistic. It is a Gestalt. Please underline that point. Experience is holistic. On the right side, last part of the first paragraph. Experience is holistic. It is a Gestalt. Then came the next one, Amal Roshan's favorite. Which is it? Amal.
Behaviorism.
Behaviorism. Finally, behaviorism is up. So structuralism, functionalism, Gestalt, and finally behaviorism. Behaviorism means the basic responses to stimuli, the basic reactions that people have, the overt and covert behaviors that we have, the learned behaviors. Learning theories are of importance here. We have a whole chapter on learning. We learned that when we learned that chapter. So here, the focus is on learning principles, learning theories, and the responses. The basic elements of the whole behavior is a response. Always remember, a response is the basic unit or basic element. And here, unlike structuralism, the mind, consciousness, all these factors are not much considered. Okay, but the behaviors, what is observable, that is important for behaviorists. The people who follow structuralism are called structuralists. You know that, right? And functionalism, functionalists, and Gestalt psychologists. Here it is behaviorists. Okay. So behaviorism, again, John Watson rejected the ideas around 1910. That year is important. John Watson rejected the ideas of mind and consciousness as subject matters of psychology. He was greatly influenced by the work of physiologists like Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov was a major theorist in classical conditioning. Have you heard of classical conditioning? Abhilash, at least your brother would have said about Pavlov and the dog. No?
I'm sure he has one, but I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, every psychology student would either they'll be confused with the topic or they'll be very much admired about this Pavlov and the dog. We learned that in the learning chapter again. Then for Watson, mind is not observable and introspection is subjective because it cannot be verified by another observer. So again, it's a clear opposition of the structuralism method. Okay. And because of that, according to him, scientific psychology must focus on what is observable and verifiable. Underline that. Scientific psychology should always focus on what is observable and verifiable. According to John Watson, this was the case. So if anything has to be observable, what we call that? You're right.
Overt behavior.
Overt behavior. So basically, John Watson was interested only in overt behaviors. Later on, the other theorists came up with these covert behaviors. Okay, but the focus of behaviorism is on responses and also the observable behaviors or verifiable behaviors. That was the major theme of behaviorism, and the major proponent was John Watson. Then, yeah, Skinner comes under this. Then B.F. Skinner, his name is B.F. Skinner. Ivan Pavlov comes under behaviorism. Then who else is there? Yeah, I think that's it. Then after that comes Sigmund Freud, psychoanalysis. The very, what do you call, influential theme of psychoanalysis was put forward by Sigmund Freud, and it is a radical view of human nature. That is a very important point. It is given in page 8, the last line. One person who shook the world with his radical view of human nature was Sigmund Freud. Freud viewed human behavior as a dynamic manifestation of unconscious desires and conflicts. So structuralism, functionalism, all those things were based on the consciousness. Now finally, the behaviorism came up, who told this consciousness is not important. We have to focus on the observable parts or the observable behaviors or verifiable behaviors. But later on, psychoanalysis came up, and there what they said is consciousness is not important, behaviors are not important. What is important is unconsciousness. Okay, something that we are not aware of, something that we are not consciously aware of, but we have it in our mind and still we are not aware of it. That is unconsciousness. So unconscious desires, unconscious motives, everything was there deep inside our mind. And most of this was considered as sexual in nature by Sigmund Freud. That's the explanation given by Sigmund Freud. The unconscious desires, the unconscious, wishes that we have, the ungratified wishes that we have in our mind, most of them are of sexual nature. That was put forward by Sigmund Freud, and he founded psychoanalysis as a system to understand and cure psychological disorders. His theories, we call them psychodynamic theories, but the method, we call it psychoanalysis. Okay, psychoanalysis. Analysis is a method, right? When you analyze something, that is a process. So psychoanalysis is a method. Psychodynamic is his theories. Psychodynamic theories. We call them psychodynamic theories. Okay. Then after that came, while Freudian psychoanalysis viewed human beings as motivated by unconscious desire for gratification of pleasure, pleasure seeking, humanistic perspective in psychology took a more positive view of human nature. As the name suggests, humanistic viewpoint or humanistic perspective means it had a positive view of human nature. But according to Freud, it was rather a negative view of human nature. Negative view means, as I told you, most of the explanations were given under this pleasure-seeking nature or the sexual gratification of humans. Okay, it was considered as a very, humans were considered towards a very negative inclined type of nature. And in humanistic perspective, everything was positive. Humans should be considered positive. They have good motivations. They have good desires. They have good potential in them to move forward in life. They have all the capabilities in them with which they can develop all the dimensions in life. And such philosophies were explained in humanistic perspective. And humanists such as Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, underline those names. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Did I mention that in class? Yes. And Carl Rogers, self-centered therapy. Next year, you'll learn about that, self-centered therapy. Okay. And emphasize the free will of human beings and their natural striving to grow and unfold their inner potential, which means they have their inner potential and they can strive for excellence. They can strive for superiority. They can strive for the best in them. That's what humanists consider. Like, let it be an average student in a class. Let it be a poor student in a class. Let it be a student who scores very high marks in the class. Each of them has a good nature in them. Each of them has a potential in them with which they can move forward, with which they have to excel in each and every task that they are engaging in. It's not necessary that each and everyone has an equal amount of potential, but everybody has a potential inside them. Okay, and they have to try and reach the maximum of this potential. When you reach this maximum of the potential, we call it self-actualization. Did I mention about self-actualization? Yes, okay. So that's about humanistic. Then we have one more, that is cognitive perspective. It is based on the structuralism, sorry, not structuralism, constructivism. That is, we actively construct the different parts of mind. That is, we don't, suppose if I give you a definition, you don't give me the exact definition. You understand it and then you give me the definition in your own ways. That is constructivism. Like, there is a knowledge base. Based on that, you will build. We'll construct, and then information is processed. So information processing model and all comes under this topic. Okay, so that's it. Let me just take the attendance. Please read this topic and come for the next class. Okay, the rest of the portion. We'll discuss the rest of the chapter and finish off. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.